He walked through the airport, suitcase in hand, trying not to notice the crowded terminals and the long lines at the security check. The lawyer was used to airports, traveling frequently for work and speaking engagements, but today felt different. Maybe it was the early morning fog, or the way the airport lights reflected off the polished floors, making everything seem a little surreal. He had his boarding pass ready and kept his wallet in his hand, making the usual small talk with the security officer as he passed through the metal detector. He had a quiet confidence, not because he thought he was better than anyone else, but because he had spent years defending people who had been treated unfairly. He had fought for justice in countless situations where others had given up. Today, however, he was only trying to catch a simple flight, nothing more. He smiled politely at a family struggling with a stroller and helped a woman pick up her dropped documents. He was calm, approachable, and unassuming, nothing that would make him stand out except, apparently, to the captain of the plane he was about to board. As he approached the gate, he noticed a line of passengers waiting patiently, some checking their watches, others scrolling on their phones. He joined the line quietly, unaware that the tension in the air was about to shift dramatically. The captain of the flight, a man in his 50s with a stern face and a rigid posture, was standing near the entrance talking to a gate agent. The lawyer didn't think much of it. He had seen captains at gates before, usually just observing boarding or speaking quietly with their staff. Then it happened. As he handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, the captain's eyes locked onto him. There was a subtle hesitation in the way the agent looked at the boarding pass, a pause that seemed longer than necessary. The lawyer smiled politely, but the smile was met with a frown from the captain. Without explanation, the captain waved his hand and said, "Stop. This passenger cannot board." The words struck the lawyer like a cold gust of wind. People around them murmured, sensing something unusual. The lawyer tried to speak, to ask politely why he was being singled out, but the captain interrupted. "You need to leave the plane immediately," he said, his tone firm, leaving no room for argument. The lawyer's calm demeanor remained, but inside he was confused and frustrated. He had followed every rule, had all his documents in order, and had never caused trouble in airports or on flights. Yet here he was being removed in front of dozens of passengers. A few passengers whispered to each other, some glancing at their phones to record the incident. One woman, a frequent traveler herself, muttered, "This doesn't feel right." Another man holding a coffee cup shook his head in disbelief. The lawyer stepped back, still composed, asking again, "Excuse me, may I know why I am being asked to leave?" The captain's response was sharp and vague. "For safety reasons, you are not allowed on this flight." The words hung in the air, hollow and unsatisfying, failing to provide any real justification. The lawyer realized quickly that arguing further would not help. He turned and started walking back, dragging his suitcase slowly behind him, the wheels squeaking against the polished floor. Passengers watched silently, some exchanging uneasy glances, feeling the injustice in the moment. The lawyer maintained his dignity, keeping his shoulders straight and his expression calm, though anger simmered just beneath the surface. He had seen injustice many times before, but experiencing it firsthand in such a public way was a different kind of challenge. Outside the gate area, he paused to take a breath, glancing around at the terminal. People walked past him, some giving him sympathetic looks, others pretending not to notice. He took out his phone, considering calling the airline to understand what had happened. Before he could dial, a few passengers approached him. "That was unfair," one said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Another added, "I can't believe he did that just like that." The lawyer nodded politely, appreciating the support, but knowing that sympathy alone would not resolve the situation. He walked toward a seating area, trying to process what had just happened. Thoughts raced through his mind. Was this about him personally? Did the captain have a reason he wasn't explaining? Or was this about something deeper, something unfair and unjust that had nothing to do with him? He had faced discrimination cases in court many times, representing clients who had been treated unfairly because of who they were. The scenario playing out before him now felt painfully familiar. As he sat down, he noticed other passengers pulling out their phones, some live streaming the incident, others taking notes or sharing updates on social media. The lawyer realized that what had seemed like a private humiliation was quickly turning into a public spectacle. He took a deep breath and decided to remain composed. He knew that reacting with anger or frustration would only escalate the situation. Instead, he focused on remaining calm, a skill honed over years of dealing with difficult cases. Meanwhile, inside the plane, the captain continued to speak with the flight attendants, his face tense, his words clipped. Passengers who had witnessed the incident whispered among themselves, some expressing disbelief, others shaking their heads. The atmosphere at the gate had shifted from routine boarding to something charged with tension and unease. It was clear that this incident would not be easily forgotten. The lawyer's thoughts turned to the broader implications. He understood that moments like these, though personal, often reflected systemic issues. He had dedicated his career to fighting injustice, helping those who had been unfairly treated and advocating for equality. Now, unexpectedly, he found himself on the other side of the experience. He resolved to handle it with the same integrity and composure he demanded from others, knowing that his actions could influence how the situation unfolded. He noticed the gate agent looking uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with both him and the captain. There was a quiet tension in the air, an unspoken acknowledgement that the situation had escalated beyond normal protocol. The lawyer considered asking again for an explanation, but he knew that the captain's decision was unlikely to change. Instead, he focused on gathering evidence and witnesses who had seen the incident firsthand. Several passengers approached him once more, offering their support. "I recorded everything," one said, showing the lawyer a video on their phone. "You did nothing wrong. I'll share this with the airline if needed." The lawyer nodded gratefully, appreciating the solidarity. He realized that while the captain's actions were unfair, the collective awareness of others could help bring the truth to light. As the minutes passed, the lawyer remained seated, quietly planning his next steps. He would contact the airline, document the incident, and ensure that it received the attention it deserved. Despite the humiliation and frustration, he remained calm and collected, refusing to let anger dictate his actions. He understood that this moment, while difficult, could be transformed into an opportunity for accountability and change. Passengers continued to board the plane, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others whispering about the incident. The lawyer observed quietly, noting how the situation had affected the atmosphere. What should have been a routine flight had become a moment of tension and reflection, highlighting the impact of bias and the importance of fairness. He resolved to turn this experience into a lesson, not only for the airline but also for the wider community, demonstrating that dignity and professionalism could prevail even in the face of injustice. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the lawyer stood up and walked toward the airline's customer service desk. He calmly explained the situation to a representative, detailing the events at the gate and providing witness accounts. The representative listened attentively, apologizing for the inconvenience and assuring him that the matter would be investigated. The lawyer remained polite but firm, determined to see that the incident was addressed appropriately. As he left the terminal to wait for the next flight, he reflected on the experience. It had been a moment of public humiliation, yes, but also a reminder of the work still needed to fight discrimination and bias. He thought about the countless clients he had represented, the battles fought in courtrooms and communities, and the progress that had been made. This incident, while personal, was part of a larger story about fairness, equality, and the importance of standing up for what was right. He sat down in a quiet corner of the terminal, opening his laptop to begin drafting an email to the airline's management, outlining the incident and requesting a formal review. He felt a sense of purpose, knowing that his actions could help prevent similar incidents in the future. Around him, life at the airport continued as usual, passengers moving from gate to gate, announcements echoing through the halls, the hum of airplanes taking off in the distance. Yet for the lawyer, the day had taken on a new significance, a moment that would stay with him and hopefully spark change. Throughout it all, he remained composed, polite, and determined. Despite being treated unfairly, he refused to let the situation diminish his integrity or sense of justice. Instead, he used the moment as an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, professionalism, and the power of standing up for what was right, even in the face of public humiliation. The events of that morning were just the beginning, setting the stage for a story that would unfold in ways the captain and the airline could not have anticipated. After being forced off the plane, the lawyer found a quiet corner in the terminal where he could sit and gather his thoughts. The hustle and bustle of the airport carried on around him, but he felt a strange sense of isolation. People moved past him, some glancing with curiosity, others too wrapped up in their own travel plans to notice what had just happened. He took a deep breath and began reflecting on the situation, trying to make sense of the captain's behavior. The lawyer had spent years defending people who had faced injustice. He had handled cases involving discrimination, harassment, and wrongful treatment. These experiences had taught him patience, composure, and the importance of understanding situations fully before reacting. He knew that what had just happened at the gate was unfair, but he also understood that reacting with anger would only escalate the situation. He reminded himself to remain calm, to observe carefully, and to gather evidence of what had occurred. As he sat quietly, he thought about the captain. What could have motivated such behavior? The lawyer had learned over the years that fear, prejudice, and personal bias often influence people's actions more than logic or reason. Perhaps the captain had acted on a preconceived notion, or maybe there was an error somewhere in the airline system that triggered this bizarre treatment. Regardless, the immediate concern was how to address it and ensure that the truth came out. Meanwhile, inside the plane, passengers who had witnessed the incident whispered among themselves. Some were recording videos, some were messaging friends about what had just happened. There was a shared sense of disbelief and quiet outrage. It was unusual for someone to be treated so unfairly in such a public space, and even more so when the person had done nothing wrong. The lawyer's calm demeanor had impressed some, while others were frustrated that the airline allowed such behavior to occur. Back in the terminal, the lawyer began speaking with passengers who had witnessed the incident. One woman had recorded the interaction on her phone and showed it to him. "I couldn't believe what I was seeing," she said. "You were completely calm and I don't even know why he did it." The lawyer thanked her, realizing that these accounts could be vital in documenting the event. It was important not only for his own case but for bringing attention to potential discrimination that could affect others in the future. He then took out his notebook and began jotting down details. The time, the gate number, the sequence of events, and the exact words spoken by the captain. He knew that keeping an accurate record was crucial. In his profession, documentation could make the difference between being ignored and being heard. He wrote everything down carefully, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. As he continued, he thought about his own background. He had come from a family that valued fairness, education, and community. From a young age, he had seen inequality and had felt compelled to act against it. His choice to become a lawyer was not just a career, it was a calling. He had dedicated his life to ensuring that people's voices were heard, that their rights were protected, and that injustice was met with accountability. This incident, while unexpected and humiliating, felt like an extension of the work he had committed to for so long. While he reflected, a few airline employees approached him. They were polite but cautious, unsure how to handle the situation. One of them said quietly, "We're sorry about what happened. The captain acted without following proper procedure." The lawyer listened carefully, acknowledging the apology, but also understanding that words alone were not enough. Accountability required more than an apology. It required investigation and change. At that moment, he noticed a small group of passengers watching him from a distance. They were curious, perhaps waiting to see what he would do next. The lawyer considered his options. He could let the incident slide, accept the humiliation, and move on. But that would not be consistent with the principles he lived by. Instead, he chose to take action, carefully planning his next steps. He would contact airline management, gather statements from witnesses, and, if necessary, involve legal channels to ensure fairness. While making a mental list of steps, he remembered previous cases where he had seen bias and prejudice go unchecked. In those situations, the consequences had been far-reaching, affecting not just individuals but entire communities. He understood that speaking up, even when uncomfortable, could prevent future injustice. This awareness strengthened his resolve to address the captain's behavior effectively and professionally. The lawyer also thought about the passengers who had supported him, acknowledging the solidarity he had received. It was a reminder that even in moments of personal difficulty, human kindness and fairness could prevail. People had witnessed the injustice, and some had even offered assistance. This collective awareness gave him hope that accountability could be achieved. In the hours that followed, he contacted airline management, providing a detailed account of the events. He included the recordings from witnesses, his own notes, and any other supporting material. He requested a formal investigation and a clear explanation of why he had been removed from the flight. Throughout the process, he remained polite, professional, and composed, understanding that maintaining dignity was essential to being taken seriously. As the day progressed, news of the incident began spreading on social media. Passengers who had filmed or shared their experiences created a small but growing conversation about bias in air travel. The lawyer recognized the power of this attention and considered how it could be used constructively. He wanted the story to highlight the importance of fairness and professionalism, not to fuel anger or division. During the afternoon, he had time to reflect further on the broader issues at play. He considered how societal bias and personal prejudice often led to situations like the one he had experienced. He thought about the countless individuals who faced unfair treatment daily, unable to document their experiences or receive recognition for the injustice done to them. This perspective fueled his determination to handle the situation not only for himself, but as an example for others. As the hours turned into evening, the lawyer received a call from the airline's customer service department. They assured him that the incident was being investigated and that the captain's actions were under review. While this was not a complete resolution, it was a step in the right direction. He appreciated the acknowledgement and the beginning of accountability. Even though he knew the process might take time, he also considered his own emotions, taking care to process the frustration, confusion, and hurt he had felt. He wrote in his notebook about the personal impact of the incident, not as a means of complaint but as a way to understand and frame the experience. By examining his own reactions, he could respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. That evening, as the terminal lights dimmed and fewer passengers moved about, he sat quietly, reflecting on the events. The experience had been a stark reminder of the ongoing work required to combat prejudice and bias. Yet it had also been a testament to resilience, professionalism, and the importance of standing up for what was right. He knew that while the incident had been humiliating, it also presented an opportunity to bring attention to systemic issues and to advocate for change. He looked around at the quieted terminal, observing travelers settling into their evening routines. The contrast between his personal experience and the ordinary flow of the airport was striking. While life continued around him, he had been thrust into a moment that demanded reflection, courage, and deliberate action. He felt a renewed commitment to justice, understanding that moments of personal challenge could serve as catalysts for broader impact. By the time he finally stood to leave the terminal, he had a clear plan in mind. He would continue to document the incident, communicate with the airline, and ensure that witnesses' accounts were preserved. He would do this calmly, professionally, and thoughtfully, demonstrating that dignity and integrity could prevail even in the face of unfair treatment. The experience had reinforced his belief in fairness, accountability, and the power of taking deliberate, principled action in difficult circumstances. The incident at the gate continued to ripple through the airport long after the lawyer had been forced off the plane. Passengers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others speaking quietly into their phones to share what had just happened. Videos captured by witnesses began circulating on social media, painting a clear picture of what had occurred. The lawyer, seated quietly in a corner of the terminal, noticed the growing attention and realized the situation was about to escalate beyond his control. He took a deep breath and reminded himself to stay calm. His experience in law had taught him that clarity and patience were more powerful than anger, even when faced with blatant injustice. The initial shock of being removed from the flight had faded, replaced by a determination to ensure the truth came to light. He began making a mental list of the steps he would take, documenting the event in detail, speaking with witnesses, contacting the airline, and preparing to handle the situation publicly if necessary. Meanwhile, inside the plane, passengers who had witnessed the captain's actions discussed what had happened. Some expressed outrage, while others were uncertain about what they had just seen. The stewardesses were aware of the incident, whispering among themselves about the unusual behavior of the captain. A few passengers who had recorded videos realized that they held important evidence of unfair treatment. and they began considering how to share it responsibly. Back in the terminal, the lawyer was approached by several passengers who had observed the incident. They offered their support and shared what they had seen. One woman had captured the exchange on her phone and showed him the recording. He examined it carefully, noting every detail, the captain's words, tone, and gestures. This evidence would be invaluable in documenting the unfair treatment he had endured. The lawyer expressed his gratitude to each witness, understanding that their willingness to come forward could make a significant difference. He then turned his attention to the airline's customer service desk. Explaining the situation calmly and clearly, he outlined the events at the gate, highlighting the lack of justification and the public humiliation he had experienced. The representative listened attentively, taking notes and assuring him that an investigation would be initiated. While the response was polite, the lawyer knew that follow-through was critical. A formal review and accountability from the airline were necessary to prevent such incidents from happening to others. As he waited for further updates, the lawyer reflected on his career and the values that had guided him. He had spent years advocating for fairness and justice, representing clients who had faced discrimination and unfair treatment. The principles he had lived by now applied to his own experience. Maintaining composure, documenting events meticulously, and seeking accountability were essential, not only for his own situation but as a model for others who might face similar challenges. The lawyer also considered the role of social media in shaping public awareness. The videos and posts circulating online had already sparked conversation, and he recognized the power of transparency in holding people and institutions accountable. He resolved to engage responsibly, ensuring that the narrative focused on fairness and justice rather than anger or division. This approach, he knew, could encourage constructive dialogue and drive meaningful change. Hours passed, and the airport began to quiet as evening approached. Fewer passengers moved about, and the hum of airport activity softened. The lawyer took this time to organize his notes, review witness statements, and plan his next steps. He carefully drafted an email to the airline's management, detailing the incident, the evidence collected, and the need for a formal investigation. Precision and clarity were paramount. He wanted to ensure that his account was thorough and credible. During this time, he also processed the personal impact of the experience. Being singled out and humiliated in a public space was not easy, even for someone accustomed to confronting injustice. He acknowledged feelings of frustration and hurt, but chose to channel them into action rather than allowing them to cloud his judgment. This self-awareness was a crucial part of his response, enabling him to approach the situation with integrity and resolve. The airline finally responded, acknowledging receipt of his complaint and assuring him that the incident would be investigated. While this was a preliminary step, it provided some reassurance that the situation would be taken seriously. The lawyer remained vigilant, understanding that true accountability would require follow-up, evidence review, and possibly public acknowledgement of the captain's actions. Meanwhile, news of the incident began to spread beyond the airport. Local media outlets picked up reports from social media, highlighting the unusual and troubling treatment of a passenger who had done nothing wrong. Commentators discussed the broader implications of bias in public spaces, drawing attention to the importance of fairness and oversight in airline operations. The lawyer, aware of the growing attention, continued to focus on fact-based communication, ensuring that the story remained grounded in truth. Throughout the evening, he spoke with friends, colleagues, and community members who expressed support and concern. Their encouragement reinforced his determination to handle the matter professionally and responsibly. He recognized that public support, combined with careful documentation, could help bring about meaningful consequences for the captain and the airline, reinforcing standards of fairness and accountability. As night fell, the terminal emptied, leaving a quiet space for reflection. The lawyer reviewed all the evidence and notes one final time, ensuring that nothing had been overlooked. He felt a sense of purpose, understanding that his response could influence not only the resolution of this specific incident, but also broader awareness and discussion about discrimination in public spaces. By the end of the day, he had established a clear plan: maintain detailed records, communicate with the airline, gather witness statements, and ensure the story was presented accurately if it reached a wider audience. He understood that the next steps were critical: but he was prepared to face them with the same composure and dedication that had guided his career for years. Sitting quietly in the terminal, he reflected on the lessons of the day. Even in moments of personal humiliation, maintaining dignity, professionalism, and integrity was essential. By focusing on evidence, clear communication, and responsible action, he could turn a negative experience into an opportunity for accountability and change. The events of that day would not define him by the injustice he endured, but by the thoughtful and principled way he responded, setting an example for others and highlighting the importance of fairness and justice in all spaces. Days after the incident, the lawyer received a call from the airline. They wanted to review what had happened at the gate in detail. He was polite and professional, explaining everything step by step, including the interactions with the captain and the gate staff, as well as the support from witnesses who had recorded the event. He felt a mixture of relief and determination. Relief because the airline was taking the situation seriously, and determination because he knew that accountability was crucial, not only for himself but for others who could face similar treatment in the future. The airline informed him that they had begun an internal investigation. They were reviewing security footage, gate records, and the testimonies of both the staff and passengers. The lawyer provided them with copies of videos recorded by witnesses, emails, and his detailed notes. It became clear that the captain's decision to remove him from the flight had no valid justification. There had been a mistake in identifying him as a security risk, and racial bias appeared to play a role in the way the situation was handled. The lawyer reflected on how such errors, combined with personal prejudice, could have serious consequences. He thought about the fear, embarrassment, and stress he had experienced when the captain singled him out. Although he had maintained his composure at the airport, he recognized that many people in similar situations might not have the resources, experience, or confidence to advocate for themselves. This realization reinforced his commitment to handle the matter professionally and publicly if necessary. News of the investigation reached the media. Several outlets had picked up on the incident, and social media posts continued to circulate. The lawyer realized the power of public attention. He considered how this visibility could be used constructively, highlighting the need for fairness and proper training for airline staff. He remained focused on the facts, ensuring that the story stayed grounded in truth and fairness rather than anger or sensationalism. The airline contacted the captain for his account of the incident. The captain initially claimed that he had acted according to safety protocols, but the investigation revealed discrepancies. Emails, logs, and testimonies showed that the captain had ignored procedures and allowed personal bias to influence his actions. The lawyer reviewed the evidence the airline had collected and was encouraged by the clarity of the findings. It became evident that he had been unfairly singled out and humiliated without any valid reason. As the days passed, the lawyer continued to gather supporting evidence. He spoke with passengers who had witnessed the event, collecting written statements and video recordings. He also reviewed the emails and notes from the airline staff who had been present at the gate. Each piece of evidence reinforced his belief that the captain had acted unjustly and that the airline needed to take corrective action. The lawyer also reflected on the broader implications of the incident. He had spent years fighting discrimination in courts, schools, and workplaces. This personal experience reminded him that bias could appear in many forms and in unexpected places. It reinforced his commitment to advocating for fairness and equality, not just for himself but for everyone affected by systemic prejudice. The airline eventually scheduled a meeting with the lawyer to discuss the investigation's findings. Representatives were honest and transparent, acknowledging the captain's mistakes and the role of bias in the incident. They apologized for the way he had been treated and assured him that measures would be taken to prevent similar incidents in the future. The lawyer listened carefully, recognizing that while the apology was important, the real impact would come from accountability and changes to procedures. He thought about the passengers who had witnessed the incident and the support they had offered. Their willingness to speak up and provide evidence had been invaluable. He reflected on the importance of community and solidarity, recognizing that collective awareness and action could help prevent injustice. He felt a deep appreciation for those who had stood with him during a difficult and humiliating moment. As the airline implemented changes, the lawyer used the experience to advocate for better training and awareness programs for staff. He participated in discussions about bias in public service and shared his story to help others understand the importance of fairness and accountability. His calm and professional handling of the situation served as an example of how to respond to injustice with integrity and composure. The lawyer also considered the personal lessons from the experience. Maintaining dignity in the face of humiliation, documenting events carefully, and seeking accountability through proper channels were all strategies he had used throughout his career. Applying them to his own situation reaffirmed their effectiveness and importance. He felt empowered, knowing that he could turn a negative experience into an opportunity for positive change. Throughout the process, the lawyer remained composed and focused. He continued to follow up with the airline, ensuring that the investigation was thorough and that corrective measures were implemented. He also remained in touch with passengers who had witnessed the incident, updating them on the progress and expressing his gratitude for their support. Their involvement highlighted the importance of collective responsibility and vigilance in addressing unfair treatment. The investigation revealed the full extent of the captain's bias and disregard for protocol. It became a turning point for the airline, prompting a review of policies, training, and oversight procedures. The lawyer's calm and measured approach had helped bring these issues to light, demonstrating that principled action could lead to meaningful change. Passengers and staff alike began to see the importance of fairness and accountability in everyday interactions. By the end of the process, the lawyer had not only ensured that his own situation was addressed, but had also contributed to a broader conversation about fairness and bias in public spaces. The captain faced consequences for his actions, including disciplinary measures and retraining, while the airline took steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. The lawyer's experience became an example of how calm, professional, and principled responses could turn personal challenges into opportunities for positive impact. After weeks of following up with the airline, the lawyer finally received a response that reflected the seriousness of the situation. The investigation had concluded and the findings were clear. The captain had acted improperly, allowing personal bias to influence his decisions and failing to follow standard procedures. The airline apologized formally, acknowledging the error and detailing steps they were taking to ensure such incidents would not happen again. It was a moment of closure, but also a reminder of how easily injustice could occur even in routine situations. The lawyer reflected on the journey from that morning at the airport to this resolution. What had begun as a humiliating and stressful experience had become a catalyst for change. His composure during the incident, the careful collection of evidence, and the support of witnesses had made a tangible difference. The airline was now reviewing training programs, revising policies, and implementing stricter oversight for staff behavior. This was not just about him. It was about creating a safer and fairer environment for every passenger. Word of the incident spread further, drawing attention from media outlets and social advocacy groups. The lawyer's story became a symbol of standing up to unfair treatment and addressing bias in public spaces. Many people reached out to him, sharing similar experiences and expressing support. His calm and principled response inspired others, showing that dignity, patience, and documentation could turn a negative experience into a force for accountability. As he resumed his travel, this time without incident, the lawyer noticed the changes around him. Staff at the airport appeared more attentive, and some even acknowledged him politely, aware of the attention the incident had drawn. Passengers moved about their routines, but there was a sense of awareness in the air, a quiet reminder that actions had consequences and that fairness mattered. The lawyer felt a mix of relief and quiet satisfaction. He had handled the situation without anger, without retaliation, but with determination and professionalism. He also reflected on the personal lessons learned. Maintaining calm in moments of public humiliation was not easy, but it allowed him to think clearly, collect evidence, and plan next steps effectively. Seeking accountability through proper channels rather than reacting impulsively ensured that his case would be taken seriously. Supporting witnesses and recognizing the role of public attention in enforcing fairness were important strategies that he would carry forward. The lawyer decided to share his experience more widely, speaking at professional gatherings and conferences about the importance of addressing bias in public spaces. He emphasized that everyone, regardless of background, deserved fair treatment, and that individuals could make a difference by responding thoughtfully and responsibly when faced with injustice. His story highlighted how personal integrity and calm perseverance could influence outcomes and inspire broader awareness. Through this journey, the lawyer strengthened his commitment to fairness and justice. The incident had been a test, challenging his patience and resilience, but it had also reinforced the principles he lived by. He understood that such challenges were opportunities to demonstrate integrity, educate others, and contribute to positive change. Each step, from collecting evidence to engaging with the airline, had been guided by a sense of purpose and responsibility. As he boarded another flight weeks later, he felt a renewed sense of confidence. The experience had left its mark, but not as a source of bitterness. Instead, it became a reminder of the importance of standing up for oneself, documenting injustices, and encouraging systems to uphold fairness. He watched passengers around him, thinking about how many people might face similar situations quietly, without resources or support. This awareness deepened his commitment to advocacy and fairness, not just professionally, but in everyday interactions. During the flight, he considered the broader lessons for society. Bias, even when subtle, could have real consequences. Policies, training, and accountability mechanisms mattered, but individual actions also had impact. Speaking out responsibly, supporting witnesses, and remaining calm under pressure were tools that could lead to meaningful change. His own experience was an example of how personal integrity could transform a negative moment into an opportunity for awareness and improvement. The lawyer also found a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the passengers who had come forward, for the airline staff who acknowledged the errors, and for his own ability to remain composed. Gratitude, he realized, was not just an emotional response but a reflection of perspective, seeing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow rather than solely as setbacks. It reinforced his belief in the importance of approaching difficult situations thoughtfully and intentionally. By the time he reached his destination, the lawyer had crafted a plan to continue advocacy work related to public fairness and bias prevention. He knew that sharing his story, highlighting the importance of documentation, and encouraging awareness could help prevent similar incidents. The experience had given him insight into how bias operated in everyday spaces, and how careful, principled action could lead to accountability. In the weeks and months that followed, he remained engaged, offering guidance and support to others who faced unfair treatment in airports or other public spaces. He spoke about the importance of observing carefully, collecting evidence, and responding calmly. He highlighted the role of witnesses and community support, showing that collective attention could amplify the impact of individual action. His story became part of a larger conversation about fairness, accountability, and the responsibility of institutions to uphold standards of equity. Looking back, the lawyer understood that the incident was a turning point. It was more than a personal challenge. It was a lesson about courage, integrity, and the power of principled action. By handling the situation thoughtfully, he had achieved accountability for himself and contributed to broader awareness and change. The captain faced consequences. The airline improved training and policies, and passengers became more aware of their role in observing and addressing unfair treatment. In the end, the lawyer's experience became a story not of humiliation, but of resilience, professionalism, and the importance of justice. He had turned a moment of public unfairness into a meaningful example for others, showing that calm, clear, and principled responses could transform adversity into progress. He carried these lessons forward, continuing to advocate for fairness, integrity, and accountability, knowing that individual action, guided by conscience and reason, could make a lasting difference in the world.